Marty says essentially that all of the countries in Europe have walked themselves out onto a cliff, and there is, and there's a strong wind on their back, and there is nothing that they can do to unwind this system that is collapsing the central banks. And it is all part of this larger kind of issue about that manifests itself particularly in the United States, where all of these pension funds and Social Security and everything else collapse in 2027. We, by the way, are going to have David Martin, a name that some of you know, will be with us here at Transition Talks in July, and he's going to talk specifically about this. Dave Martin made the Arlington Institute a bit famous back in 2006 when he came here to Berkeley Springs and gave a talk to a small number of people that explaining to them that the processes that were in the works already made it inevitable that by starting in December of 2007 and going into 2008, there would be a giant collapse of the financial system, and it would cause huge kind of problems. And remember, this is over a year beforehand. And we had a lot of people were wondering what in the world we were talking about. But afterwards, they all came and said, man, you were really right. You were really right. And I said, I wasn't right. It was Dave Martin. But anyway, David will be back in July, which will be quite interesting. He didn't have much of a following back when he was associated with the Arlington Institute. Now he tells me he's got 5 million people who are on his mailing list, and a guaranteed 300 that follow him around to every place that he gives a talk. And so we booked the biggest place in town in order to do that. But the point is that there is this extraordinary financial event that underpins all of this stuff, and you can make the case probably pretty strongly that the whole business in Ukraine is all tied to this, as well as all of the things that he alluded and went past it in a hurry. But all the business about climate change and so on are all of these efforts to essentially derail this amazing, big, profound kind of financial event that is coming downstream. Now, we're into it. We've talked about this for a long time, years now, about what was coming, and now we're here. There's just no doubt about it. You've got huge kind of amazing events that are all showing up on a daily basis that are kind of mind-boggling if you follow all this stuff, and particularly if you try to make any kind of sense out of it, because it is kind of wild and crazy. In the United States, just to pick one thing, the California's Air Resources Board truck and bus regulation they've just put in place. The Air Resources Board truck and bus regulation requires diesel trucks and buses that operate in California to be upgraded to reduce emissions by January the 1st, 2023. When is that? That's less than a year from now. Nearly all trucks and buses will need to have 2010 model year engines or equivalent. Compliance requirements are currently in effect. And the Western States Trucking Association said this new law will eliminate 80,000 commercial trucks from operating, accounting for 17% of the trucks in the state. we in the industry know that if you think that there was a supply chain problem over last year, wait until you take this many trucks out of the marketplace that are not replaceable. You can be talking about something that we as a country have never seen before. And the stuff is happening that, these kinds of things are happening all over the place. And it's becoming acute enough in California that I just got this note just while I was sitting here waiting. And Lee Dundas, that's a name some of you may know relative to the COVID situation. Lee Dundas said, quote, "Governor Newsom and friends, hear me loud and hear me well. You will vote this crap down or retract those bills, or all of us are coming to Sacramento to hold you accountable for crimes against humanity." And the point I'm trying to make is that people start doing things they've never done before once you push them over the edge into this kind of never land kind of space. That's what you start to get. In Shanghai, you've got something, I think 24 million people or something like that and they are not letting out, not letting move. And boy, when you read the stories, there's a reporter from the Christian Science Monitor that just wrote a story about just moving into, they shut the whole place down just as she landed in Shanghai, and the travails she went through trying to get onto a train and get to Beijing. She had 17 different COVID tests between Shanghai and Beijing because the government there has this zero COVID policy, and they are going crazy over trying to keep everything. This thing, that there's no examples, no cases of COVID around. And it is producing these amazing kind of situations, to say nothing about, I mean, they've closed down the world's largest port in Shanghai. And it just goes on. And you've got people who are literally starving, and you've just never seen anything like this before. And it's rolling around in the UK, for instance. They have living standards in Britain continue a death spiral as wages fall to outpace inflation amid soaring energy costs, according to new data. Bloomberg, citing data from the Office of National Statistics, said average earnings excluding bonuses for February dropped 1.3%. That's in 1 month. Run the numbers, annualize that, and you're up to about 8 to 17, 16% per year decrease in buying power right now. That's just this month. And it's the most since 2013. You got people in the parliament that are saying household incomes are obliterated. We can't go on like this, and so on. I mean, this is crazy. In China, they just announced today, I just heard it, they're doing water rationing across the country in different places and key areas. What Marty Armstrong says about this is that he says that behind the curtain, which is what his kind of imagery for what he's getting privately from some of his sources inside government and so on and around the world, he said the Khazarian mafia are fighting tooth and nail for their very survival and are making increasingly dire threats. Klaus Schwab, this is not Marty, this is, I'll think of it here in a second. Klaus Schwab of the COVID pushing World Economic Forum paints a frightening scenario of comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospitals, and our societies as a whole. You will remember that the World Economic Forum got on very early onto this COVID business. They were an early sponsor of the gaming that went on the year before it showed up. And Klaus Schwab is famous for standing up and saying you should never miss the opportunity to take advantage of this thing, and we can use it to reset the whole world's economy and take advantage of the COVID situation. And transportation, hospitals, and societies for the whole are coming down. The COVID crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance by comparison. Did you follow that? Now the World Economic Forum is pitching the idea of a comprehensive cyber attack. Now, what does that mean? That means the electrical system doesn't work. It means the internet doesn't work. It means that, nothing. You can't buy gasoline because the pumps are all, run on electricity. You can't, it just shuts the whole thing down. And now you got to ask yourself, who would want to shut down the world? I mean, it's a crazy idea. Whoever would want to do that, and there's no kind of conventional logical path into this that would explain that would isolate, which would identify the individual or this particular group that would benefit, because you're always looking for benefits. Who would benefit by shutting down the whole world? I mean, it makes no sense at all, except for maybe understanding or coming and believing that you have this titanic struggle that's going on right now between these two forces to see who will dominate this planet, whether it's this old world or this emergent new world. We've talked about it, whether it's the world of dependency and technocracy, or whether it's the new kind of world of independence and enablement and empowerment. And if in addition to that, there was a deadline, maybe there's a thing that they all know about, or some of them, at the high levels know about, that just ends this whole thing. It's the end of the ball game or whatever it is, and it shows up sometime relatively soon. Sometime between, and all of the indicators are that sometime between 2027 and 2030, that there is some, whether it's a wave of energy that comes out of the center of the galaxy that they know about, whether it is some event that happens on the sun that has some predictable kind of nature aspect to it, whatever it is, it's like they're throwing everything they can against the wall to see what will stick, because they're running out of stuff. Like Cliff High said, they've tried to do it with COVID, and they tried to do it with this, and they tried to do it with that. And there is this kind of amazing, the imagery that I have, and it's not just that I made it up, but you get it from bits and pieces of things, is that there are these two kind of amazing forces, and these are terrestrial, these are kind of people, and they have supercomputers on two sides of this thing, and they are gaming the reactions, and it's called game theory, as a matter of fact, and they are very sophisticated capabilities which game the direction, and they say, if I do this, what will happen? And then if I did this, what would happen? And what are the probabilities that that would happen or this would happen? And what could I do to increase the probabilities that this would happen? And so that's why you get these false flags and these mass shootings and all these kinds of things. I mean, did you happen to notice that all the time during COVID, nobody had any mass shootings, and now all of a sudden they're back again? I mean, they turn these things on and off, and it's all like gaming it and saying, yeah, if I put a little more fear into here, then what will that do? And I had lunch once. I may have told you this story. I had lunch once in Terry's restaurant here in Berkeley Springs, where some of you have eaten with me. And we were sitting there by the window, or I was yeah, by the window with somebody, and I was explaining to them the kind of predictable nature of what all of this is. And I was telling them, you know, they do it here, then they'll do it over there, and then they'll do it over there, and they spread it around. And there's about 6 weeks or 7 weeks between each one as they keep the system kind of in disequilibrium and in fear. And I said to him, as a matter of fact, so the timing is about right. Tomorrow there should be something. And absolutely, the next day there was this bombing in the subways in London. And this is an orchestrated, planned kind of process, and they are trying to drive this thing off of a cliff. And we talked last week about the implications for food, and it's getting increasingly acute. I mean, when you talk about taking almost 20% of the trucks off the road in California, California's where most of the produce for this, California and Florida, or most of the domestic produce are generated in this country. And so the stuff has this cascading additive. It's not additive, it's additive, but then it's geometric in terms of its implications. It just rolls its way through the system, and it's coming, and it is here. And it hasn't for the most part, it hasn't affected all of us. You know, some of us have been influenced or been related to folks who had problems with COVID and so on, and I'm not depreciating that at all. But most of us, I guess, in this group, I would guess, have kind of weathered their way through all of this in a fairly, you know, a reasonable kind of way. We've been forced to think about things and to deal with stuff that we haven't had to do before. But, you know, we all made it, and we're all kind of okay. And what I'm trying to suggest is this is just the beginning. This thing is really coming. And when you shut down these supply chains like this, it's real easy and really short. It's like these stupid wars that these people do. I mean, it's real easy. In a matter of weeks, you can destroy, you know, most of a country. And but it takes a long time to rebuild it. And that's the situation that we're in. And what it's doing is forcing us all to think, rethink, to reposition, to newly understand who we are and what are our options and what can we do. Because if you keep playing their game, if you keep being, you know, effectively engaged in this is a waterfall. This is a thing that's going off of a cliff into a very dystopian kind of space out there. If you keep, you know, paddling down the middle of that and that river. And what we've got to do is kind of jump off and, I don't know, haul our boat across to some other little placid lake that's really kind of nice and beautiful, and figure out that we got to do things really differently. And I believe that that's the essence of this emergence of a new world and a new human, and that the new human, we're being forced and we're being put forced into this situation to rethink who we are and what we do and how we operate. We did a quartet taping yesterday, and Greg was talking about, and he said, there's a whole lot of people in our space who think that this new human is all about a change in terms of, spiritual stuff and how your consciousness and so on. And they don't consider the fact that it's a full spectrum kind of change. It's 3D, and how we live and how we operate and all of those kinds of things are part of the whole package. And it's not just everything's going to be all right, the aliens are going to come and pick us up and take us to a new world, or something like that. I mean, it's really about changing who we are and who we think we are. And the practical aspects of that is stuff like food and water and all of the other kind of things. And so I'm wondering, what are you going to do differently next week because of, well, you've heard about this stuff that's going on? Because if they're not going to do something differently, then you're just getting swept down the stream, along with the extraordinary forces that are trying to capture you throughout this process. So what are you going to do differently that you haven't done before? If you found that helpful and interesting, and you haven't done so already, why don't you just click on the link below and give us your email so that we can send you alerts for the next segments of PostScript. We'd love to be able to tell you beforehand when things are coming downstream, so you don't have to go look for them. And this is the best way to do that. We assure you that we won't share your information with anyone else. Thanks.